Today, we pick up our van and start driving. So here's our planned route. We would head out of Los Angeles via Route 1 to get a bit of a view of the Pacific Highway before heading more inland, cutting through Los Padres National Forest. This would add an hour onto our travel time, but the roads through this area simply looked fun to drive along. After that, we'd head straight through the California Central Valley, making a beeline to the Sierra Nevada mountain range, arriving at our first national park, Sequoia. So after our final sleep in that hostel, we hopped on one last LA bus towards the van depot, and after a little bit of paperwork, we were on the road. So for full clarification, I'd never driven in the US before. I had never driven a large van before, and the biggest city I'd ever driven through in the UK was Plymouth. So all of a sudden, I'm on the opposite side of the road, trying to get used to how to operate this new type of vehicle, all while trying to navigate like 6 lanes of traffic in one of the busiest cities in America. It was pretty stressful to begin with, but luckily Alicia was fantastic at giving directions, and an hour later, we were out the city. We pulled over here to recuperate a bit. I don't even know where here is. Somewhere along Route 1, not far out of Los Angeles. We decided we needed to go food shopping before we get too far away from civilization. We had also been made aware Walmart allows people to stay overnight in their car parks. So we found a Walmart in Oxnard, stocked up on supplies, and slept there in the Walmart car park.
Entering a mountain.
One hot, sweltering night later, we were surprised to wake up to a parking notice in the front of our van. Apparently, not all Walmarts are okay with overnight parking. Luckily, it was just some sort of warning ticket telling us not to park there overnight again. Alright, whatever. We were now really on our way to Sequoia.
I'm really happy about Yosemite being with us.
These roads through the Los Padres National Forest may have added an extra hour onto our travel time, but the drive was amazing, and a bit of a sample as to what was to come. Conversely, the California Central Valley was boring as fuck. Mostly nothing but orange trees for hours. There were some nice golden plains too, though. "229 miles, and close to 6 hours later, we had arrived at Sequoia National Park. Although it was probably a bit too late to explore, we did pop into the visitor center and spend $80 on an annual pass. This would grant us free access to every US national and state park, a small price to pay considering the amount we intended to visit. We naively thought we could just rock up to a campsite and sleep there in the park, Turns out these official national park campsites are not only extremely popular, but also pretty expensive. They were something like $30 to $40 a night, and not only that, but all the ones here in Sequoia were fully booked for quite some time. Alright, so minor rant, but when I camp back home in the UK, I just find somewhere and set up my tent. I can usually leave my car somewhere nearby, and know it'll still be there the next morning. Sleeping in vehicles overnight in our national parks is not only completely fine, but free too. None of this paying a fee and being fully booked bullshit. Turns out camping in the US is a bit different. Fine. But this rubbed me the wrong way. If camping was like this in the US, then I wasn't really interested in it. So I had no idea where we could stay, since apparently overnight parking in a US national park is generally a big no-no. Anyway, we got speaking to this girl outside the visitor centre. We never got her name, but she was really helpful and directed us towards this app called iOverlander. iOverlander was an app for people like us, who had a vehicle but didn't want to pay for a glorified parking spot. I wish I could thank this girl again, because honestly this app was probably one of our most useful tools this entire trip. Just outside the park boundaries, we spotted something called BLM camping. This stands for Bureau of Land Management. I don't really know the ins and outs of it, but essentially if something is marked as BLM camping, we could stay there for free. Thank fuck. The spot of land we stumbled across was little more than a small dirt car park at the start of a trailhead, but it was completely empty and cost nothing, so hey, works for us. We cooked up some cheap noodles and enjoyed a quiet, peaceful evening in this spot. I did some drawing, Alicia saw a hummingbird, we washed our clothes in the van sink and got our first decent night's rest. It had been a crazy day of travelling, learning, and honestly a trial run for the rest of the trip to come. Tomorrow, we'd explore Sequoia National Park properly. Sequoia National Park was amazing. Taking photos of these national park signs is a must, by the way. A lot of them are really unique. One of the first things we discovered was this big rock, Tunnel Rock. It looked like once upon a time you could drive under it. Well, not with our van's 11-foot clearance, that's for sure. But even for small cars, Tunnel Rock seemed to have been indefinitely blocked off. That didn't stop us from climbing on it though. We parked up and found this wonderful creek area, with water so clear we decided on a wild swim. We'd soon learn to savour these free bathing experiences.
Fancy a dip?
Nah.
I do.
It's gorgeous though.
Yeah, in a minute. Hang on. You alright? It's quite shallow over here.
Let's go, baby.
Ready?
Yeah.
No wild swimming, Eloise.
Okay. When you come back around the corner, I'll get some other of you.
Swimming. Alright, ready? Nice.
We carried on following the General's Highway up the mountain. This twisting, winding road is really fun to drive, and you get some awesome views. At the top of this highway was a marvellous collection of tree groves, featuring giant sequoias and numerous hiking trails. We didn't do any hardcore hikes here, because we were more focused on packing in as much variety into one day as possible. We did, however, check out another must-visit staple of the national parks, the visitor centres, hosting information, news, and most alluring for leisure, the gift shops. Just outside of the aptly named Giant Forest was the Giant Forest Museum, a relatively small building packed with facts about the neighbouring colossal trees. I'd say we got a pretty great overall experience of the whole park this way, sticking to smaller walks. We of course saw the largest tree in the world, General Sherman, and yeah, he was massive. I couldn't get the whole thing in shot. Hopping back onto Iovalander, we found another free campsite, just outside of Sequoia. Located down a bit of a dubious dirt road, we arrived to find this one was a little more busy than our previous night. We initially parked up next to some dodgy hillbilly-looking family who seemed to be on a family hunting trip. They were giving us dirty looks, so we moved over a little. That's when we met John, a friendly Christian man who worked at a Jesus camp not too far from here, but it was the off-season now, so all the kids were at school. He set up a campfire, and we got chatting about where we were from and what we were doing. We mentioned we were still pretty much figuring everything out. For one, we still had no idea where to top up our van's drinking water. So he told us to come on by his campsite in the morning, and he'd top it up for us. So far, I think this was probably my favourite day. It had a bit of a magical sort of feeling to it. We thanked John and said goodnight. After meeting John at his campground, topping up our water, we were on our way to our next destination, Yosemite National Park. But before we left the mountains, we figured we'd quickly have a drive-by checkout of Kings Canyon National Park. Driving down into Kings Canyon was really fun, lots of twisting, winding roads descending deep into the canyon. Although by the time we got to the bottom, we weren't really sure what to do. There were a lot of big hiking trails, but they all seemed pretty long and intense, and we needed to get to Yosemite by the end of the day. There was a cave tour, but it would cost an extra fee. We decided to have a bite to eat at the Grizzly Falls picnic area, where we got a great view of this waterfall, before heading back out of Kings Canyon. On our way out of the mountains, we also passed through Grant Grove, and got out for a little walk, checking out another impressive collection of giant sequoia trees. Though Yosemite is part of the same mountain range as Sequoia, there was no direct route there via the mountains. Instead, we'd have to drive back into the Central Valley, pass through Fresno, and then head back into the mountains towards Yosemite. One 4-hour drive later, racking up another 150 miles, we arrived just outside of Yosemite. And I really mean just outside. We found this spot literally right next to the main road and in front of the sign welcoming you into the park, just opposite a gorgeous river. This area seemed really popular with rock climbers looking to get an early start into the park. And tomorrow we'd head into Yosemite ourselves.